Elijah Cole knew the job was wrong the moment he stepped through the iron gates of Judge Whitmore's mansion in Independence, Missouri. Not because of the money, not because of the distance, but because of the silence. The kind of silence that hangs over a place where decisions are made without mercy. The white columns of the mansion rose high above the dusty street, shining like something dragged out of Boston and dropped in the middle of the frontier. Polished windows reflected the morning sun. Trimmed gardens lined the walkway. It did not belong in Missouri, and neither did Elijah. He adjusted his worn cavalry hat and read the letter one more time before knocking. Escort duty, Colorado Territory, generous compensation. After months of scraping by on poker winnings and odd tracking jobs, generous compensation sounded like salvation. A servant led him inside through halls lined with crystal chandeliers and heavy carpets that swallowed the sound of his boots. The house smelled of perfume and polished wood. Elijah smelled of leather, gun oil, and trail dust. Judge Whitmore waited behind a wide mahogany desk, silver hair neat, dark eyes sharp and measuring. "You are Elijah Cole," the judge said calmly. "Yes, sir. I require a guide. You come recommended." Elijah stood still. "For how long?" 6 weeks. My daughter must be escorted to Denver City. She is to marry Harrison Blackwood." The judge spoke as if announcing a business merger. $200 upon delivery, Whitmore added, sliding a leather pouch across the desk. Gold coins clinked inside. Elijah lifted it. It felt heavier than the past 3 months of his life. "And the danger?" Elijah asked. The judge's eyes hardened slightly. "This is the frontier. There is always danger." The deal was simple. Ride west, deliver the judge's daughter, collect payment, walk away. It should have been easy, until he met her. The next morning, a covered wagon stood in the circular drive. Trunks were stacked neatly, 2 mules stamped impatiently, and on the mansion steps stood Josephine Whitmore. She wore a deep blue traveling dress that probably cost more than Elijah's horse. Auburn hair was pinned carefully beneath a hat, too delicate for wind. Her green eyes were sharp with anger. "I refuse to travel with a hired gun," she said coldly. Elijah stopped beside the wagon. "Ma'am, I don't intend to drag anyone across 800 miles who doesn't want to go." She blinked at that. The judge stepped forward. "Josephine, enough." Her jaw tightened. "This marriage is your arrangement, not mine." Elijah watched quietly. He had seen this look before. Soldiers ordered into battles they did not choose. Finally, Josephine lifted her chin. "Fine. Mr. Cole may escort me, but he will remember his place." Elijah touched his hat. "Crystal clear, Miss Whitmore." By noon, they were rolling out of Independence. The first miles passed in silence. Josephine sat stiff on the wagon seat. Her maid, Mary, huddled behind trunks. Elijah rode alongside on his Mustang, Scout, scanning the horizon. The prairie stretched endless under a wide blue sky. Grass rolled like waves. Hawks circled high above. Josephine finally spoke. "How long have you lived like this?" "Since the war ended." "You were a soldier?" "3rd Colorado Cavalry." She studied him for a moment. "And now?" "Now I survive." She turned away, but something in her expression softened. By midday, the wind had pulled loose half her hairpins. Auburn strands whipped across her face. The corset beneath her dress had become her enemy. Boston elegance did not travel well over rutted trails. Elijah built a small fire near Campbell's Creek that evening. He handed her a tin cup of coffee. She took it carefully, grimaced at the bitterness, but said nothing. As darkness fell, the prairie changed. Coyotes called in the distance. Wind whispered through tall grass. The stars came out in numbers no city could match. Josephine stared at the sky. "I've never seen it like this," she whispered. Elijah looked up. "Out here, there's nothing to block the truth." "And what truth is that?" "That you're small and the world doesn't care who your father is." She was quiet for a long time. Later, when Mary had gone to the tent, Josephine remained by the fire. "Tell me honestly," she said. "Have you ever lost someone on a journey like this?" The question struck deeper than she knew. "Yes." "Did it change you?" "It ended the man I was before." The fire cracked between them. For the first time, her anger faded. Vulnerability replaced it. "Will you get me to Denver safely?" she asked quietly. "Yes." She nodded once. "Then call me Josephine." The name lingered in the air, like a promise neither understood yet. The fourth day brought dust storms and something worse. They had taken shelter in a narrow canyon when riders emerged from the swirling sand. 3 men, faces covered, guns drawn. Elijah's rifle was already raised. "That's far enough." The leader smiled beneath his bandana. "Just sharing shelter." Josephine's voice cut through the wind. "Mr. Cole?" The rider's eyes sharpened at the sound of her. "Well now, valuable cargo." Elijah felt it then. Not fear, recognition. This was not random. After tense seconds, the riders withdrew into the storm. But Elijah knew men like that did not disappear. That night, beneath Pony Rock, Josephine asked him to teach her to shoot. He hesitated. She met his eyes steadily. "If death is following us, I won't sit helpless." He placed the revolver in her hands. "First rule," he said quietly, "never point it unless you're ready to change your life." The gun roared. She flinched. The shot missed. By the 10th attempt, she was hitting tin cans with steady hands. She lowered the revolver slowly. "I'm not who I was 4 days ago," she said. Elijah studied her. The trail had stripped away silk and pride. What remained was steel. "Neither am I," he admitted. But he did not say what he felt rising inside him. Because somewhere between the dust storms and the gunfire, between the firelight and the starlit silence, the job had changed. He was no longer just escorting Judge Whitmore's daughter to her wedding. He was following her into something far more dangerous and far more impossible to escape. The next morning, the prairie looked peaceful. Golden light rolled across the grass. The sky was clear. It felt like the world had forgiven them. It had not. By noon, they found the overturned wagon. One wheel still spun slowly in the wind. Trunks lay scattered. A dark stain marked the driver's seat. Josephine climbed down before Elijah could stop her. Someone might still be alive. He scanned the horizon, rifle ready. No movement, no birds circling. That was worse. They found the driver crawling through the grass, an arrow buried in his shoulder. His face was pale with shock. "They took them," he gasped. "My wife. My little girl. Please." "Indians?" Elijah asked. The man shook his head weakly. "White men, dressed like them." Josephine's hands trembled, but her voice did not. "We can't leave them." Elijah looked at her. This was not part of the job. Every minute they delayed increased the risk. But he saw something in her eyes. Not stubborn pride. Not anger. Conviction. "I can track them," he said finally. "But the wagon stays." "Then I'm coming," she replied. "No." "Yes." Their eyes locked. Neither blinked. "You follow every order," he said at last. No hesitation. Agreed. He saddled the spare horse. They left Mary with the wounded man and rode hard into broken country. The trail was easy to read. 6 riders, heavy mounts, moving fast but careless. Confident. That would be their mistake. By sunset, Elijah spotted soot and smoke rising from a dry wash. He signaled Josephine to dismount. They crept forward on foot. 6 men sat around a fire. The woman and her daughter were tied near a wagon wheel. Josephine's jaw tightened. "Wait for my signal," Elijah whispered. He circled wide, using every shadow. War had taught him patience, stillness, the art of becoming part of the land. His first shot dropped the leader before the others understood what was happening. Chaos exploded. Josephine did not freeze. She ran for the captives, knife flashing in her hand. A raider lunged toward her. Elijah fired, but another man closed in from the side. Josephine raised the revolver he had trained her with. The shot was not perfect. It did not need to be. The raider stumbled back, giving Elijah the second he needed. When the smoke cleared, 6 bodies lay in the dirt. Josephine stood shaking, revolver still raised. "You did good," Elijah said quietly. She lowered the gun slowly. "I almost killed him. You saved them." That night, after reuniting the family, they sat by a smaller fire. Josephine stared into the flames. "It's different when it's real," she said. "Shooting at a person." "Yes." "Does it get easier?" "It shouldn't," he answered. She leaned against him without thinking. He did not move away. Days later, they reached Fort Larned and learned the truth. The men who had followed them in the dust storm were part of Jake Bonner's gang. Hired guns, ruthless, paid well. "Paid by who?" Josephine asked. Elijah did not answer immediately, but he had a suspicion. They left the main trail after that, cutting south into rougher land. The land changed them. Josephine abandoned her elaborate dresses for practical clothes. She braided her hair simply. She learned to drive the team, to set camp, to read the sky. The frontier stripped away pretense, and something else began to grow. One evening, high on a mountain plateau, the wind caught her braid, and she stood at the edge of the world, looking wild and unafraid. "I can't go back," she said softly. Elijah knew she meant more than Boston. "What happens when we reach Denver?" she asked. He swallowed. "I deliver you." She turned to him slowly. "And then?" There was no answer that did not hurt. He stepped closer despite himself. "This isn't part of the job," he said roughly. "No," she whispered. "It isn't." Her hand rose, touching the scar on his jaw. The world narrowed to that single point of contact. He kissed her. Not gently, not carefully. Like a man who had lost once and swore never to risk again. She kissed him back like a woman who had decided she would choose her own life. When they broke apart, the mountains seemed closer. "This complicates everything," he said. "My life was complicated before you," she replied. "At least this complication is mine." But complications had consequences. When they finally reached Trinidad, they faced Harrison Blackwood. He was not what Elijah expected. Younger, calculating, smooth, and he knew more than he should. "This marriage prevents a war," Blackwood told them calmly. "Power, railroads, water rights. Without this alliance, a man named Samuel Morrison controls everything." Josephine's face went pale. "So I am not a bride," she said quietly. "I am leverage." "Yes." Silence filled the room. "You want out?" Blackwood asked. Then bring me proof Morrison hired Bonner. Without him, I don't need this marriage. 1 week. That was the deal. 1 week to hunt the hunter. They rode back into the mountains with new purpose. They were no longer prey. They were bait. Josephine spread word in saloons and trading posts that she was fleeing the wedding. Bonner came exactly as expected. The ambush unfolded in a box canyon beneath a blood-red sunset. This time, they were ready. Blackwood's men closed in. Bonner surrendered with a crooked smile. Morrison hired me, he admitted. Got it all in writing. Documents were found. Proof secured. Within days, Morrison's empire began to collapse, and Josephine was free. Truly free. On a dusty street in Trinidad, she faced Elijah. No more excuses, she said. You're sure? He asked. I choose you. Before he could answer, a familiar voice cut through the air. Josephine! Judge Whitmore stood behind them, eyes burning with fury. The past had finally caught up, and this time, it was not wearing a mask. Judge Whitmore looked older than Elijah remembered. Not weaker, just tired. You've embarrassed me, the judge said coldly. You've shattered an alliance that took years to build. Josephine did not lower her eyes. I was never an alliance, she said. I was your daughter. The words struck harder than any bullet. Elijah stepped slightly in front of her, but she placed a hand on his arm. No, she said quietly. This is mine. The judge studied her as if seeing her for the first time. The polished Boston girl was gone. In her place stood a woman sun-browned, steady, unafraid. You choose him? He asked. I do. Over security, over wealth, over your future? Josephine's voice did not shake. I am choosing my future. The silence between father and daughter felt heavier than the mountain air. Finally, the judge exhaled. I thought I was protecting you, he said. After your mother died, I swore you would never struggle, never suffer. You cannot build safety out of control, she replied softly. And you cannot build love out of strategy. The judge looked at Elijah. If you fail her, he said quietly, I will find you. Elijah met his gaze without flinching. I won't. For a long moment, it seemed the past might explode again. Instead, the judge turned away. You are no longer my responsibility, he said. Live with your choices. And he walked out of their lives. For good. That night, Elijah and Josephine stood alone beneath the wide Colorado sky. It's done, she whispered. Yes. No more contracts, no more negotiations, no more being delivered. He touched her face gently. No more escort duty. She smiled through tears. Then what are we? Elijah looked west, toward the endless line where earth met sky. Free. They left Trinidad before sunrise, not as fugitives, not as pawns, but as partners. They rode south first, changing trails often, staying off major routes. Word of Morrison's arrest spread quickly. His men scattered. His power crumbled. Still, danger lingered. One morning before dawn, gunfire shattered the quiet of their hotel room. Morrison's last loyal men had come for revenge. Elijah rolled from the bed, dragging Josephine with him as bullets tore through wood. Window! He barked. They escaped across rooftops in bare feet and night clothes. Gunfire chasing them through the pink light of morning. Josephine fired back without hesitation. Not because she enjoyed it. because she refused to be hunted again. They rode out under escort from Blackwood's men, leaving the chaos behind. At the territorial border, the escort turned back. From that moment on, it was just the two of them. And the open West. They traveled under new names, Thomas and Margaret Harper. It felt strange at first, like shedding skin. But as days passed, the old names began to feel distant, like characters in a story they once heard. In Santa Fe, they were married quietly in a small chapel. No orchestra, no grand ballroom, no society guests, just vows spoken honestly. "I choose you," she said. "I choose you," he answered. And for the first time in his life, Elijah felt something stronger than survival. He felt peace. They headed west with a wagon train toward California. The journey was long, hard, dusty, but it was theirs. They worked side by side, fought off small threats, helped other settlers, learned the rhythms of each other's thoughts. They were no longer escaping. They were building. 5 years later, the morning sun rose over a ranch in Northern California. Rolling hills stretched golden beneath a wide sky. Margaret Harper stood on the porch, one hand resting on her swollen belly. Thomas joined her with 2 cups of coffee. "You should rest," he said. "I will," she replied, "after I watch the sunrise." The land was theirs now. 500 acres of cattle and horses and orchards, built with sweat and stubborn faith, built together. A rider approached that afternoon, older, slower. Judge Whitmore. He dismounted at the gate like a man carrying stones in his heart. "I came to see you," he said. Margaret did not move forward, but she did not turn away either. He spoke of regret, of pride misplaced, of fear disguised as control. He handed her documents, inheritance freed from conditions. "I cannot undo what I did," he said, "but I can say I was wrong." Margaret felt the weight of years loosen, not vanish, but loosen. "Be happy," the judge said before riding away. That night, she sat beside Thomas beneath the same wide sky that had once watched them flee gunfire. "Do you regret it?" he asked. She looked at their ranch, at the horses, at the valley, at the life they chose. Not for a single moment. Their daughter was born in autumn. They named her Sarah Mary, for love lost, for love found, for the women whose sacrifices shaped their path. As Thomas held his newborn child, he thought back to the first day he rode through Judge Whitmore's iron gates. He had been hired to escort a woman west, deliver her safely, collect his pay, walk away. Instead, he followed her into danger, into rebellion, into truth, into love he could not outrun. And as the California sunset painted the sky in gold and fire, Thomas Harper smiled quietly. The escort job had ended long ago, but the journey had only just begun.